The millionaire stopped when he saw the carpenter touching the toy. She repaired wood, but without knowing it, she mended hearts. The son smiled. The father felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. At that moment, an unlikely love began to blossom. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The familiar scent of fresh sawdust hung in the air as Myla delicately ran the sandpaper over the uneven surface of the wood. Her calloused fingers, protected by the worn overalls that bore the marks of countless projects, moved with the precision of someone who knew every fiber of the material she worked with. The small studio, nestled between modern buildings in the historic city center, was her refuge and her inheritance, a treasure left by 3 generations of craftsmen who came before her. Through the dusty window, she could see the scaffolding that had multiplied on the neighboring buildings, symbols of the modernization that was slowly swallowing up the last vestiges of the old colonial architecture. Myla sighed, brushing a lock of hair away from her face with the back of her hand, leaving a trail of wood dust on her forehead. At 25 years old, she carried on her shoulders not only the weight of keeping alive the craft she had learned as a girl, but also the responsibility of preserving this space that was much more than a simple workshop. The exposed brick walls held stories in every crack, and the tools hung methodically seemed to watch her like silent guardians of a time that refused to pass. In the far corner, the portrait of her grandfather, framed by a delicate hand-carved frame, smiled serenely, as if approving of her every move. "Myla, I brought your coffee," the soft voice of Donna Clara, her grandmother, echoed through the room. The silver-haired, bright-eyed lady approached with a steaming cup, her walk slow but steady, like the roots of a century-old ipe tree. "You need to take a break, my dear. You've been working since dawn." Myla accepted the cup with a tired smile. "I need to finish this order today, Grandma. The customer is coming to pick it up tomorrow morning." Her eyes fell on the delicate coffee table, taking shape beneath her hands, the grain of the solid wood revealing patterns that only a trained eye could appreciate. "You demand too much of yourself, girl," Donna Clara commented, running her hand through her granddaughter's hair. "Your grandfather always said that wood has its own time. There's no point in rushing the process." The distant sound of jackhammers and the din of nearby construction seemed to mock that ancient advice. Myla knew that time was running out. For weeks, posters had been advertising the ambitious urban revitalization project that promised to transform this part of the city. Phoenix Construction, a real estate giant, had already bought up nearly every property on the block. "I received another proposal from them today," Donna Clara commented, as if reading her granddaughter's thoughts. "The value has increased considerably." Myla felt her stomach turn. It wasn't the first time that representatives from the construction company had tried to convince them to sell the studio. The offers were getting more and more tempting, but for her there was no amount of money in the world that could buy that place. "We're not selling, Grandma. This place is our history, our life. It was here that I learned everything I know. It was here that Grandpa—" Her voice trailed off for a moment. "It was here that he taught me that every piece of wood has a soul of its own." Donna Clara nodded silently, her eyes scanning the tools on the walls, each with its own story to tell. The silence was broken by the sound of the rain that was beginning to fall outside, first in timid drops, soon turning into a curtain of water that washed the cobblestones of the street. Myla went back to work, her precise movements following the rhythm of the rain. She was so focused that she almost didn't notice when a metallic noise, followed by the sound of wheels and a childish exclamation of frustration, came from the street. She looked up in time to see, through the fogged-up window, the silhouette of a wheelchair parked in front of the workshop. Without hesitation, Myla dropped her tools and ran for the door. The rain was coming down hard now, and there, partially shielded by the faded awning of the workshop, stood a boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. His wide, expressive eyes held a mixture of frustration and helplessness as he stared at something in his lap, a small wooden cart that appeared to have lost one of its wheels. "Hey, are you okay?" Myla asked, approaching cautiously so as not to scare him. The boy looked up, revealing an expression that carried a maturity incompatible with his age. "The wheel on my cart. It's broken," he replied in a shaky voice, showing the damaged toy. Mila looked at the piece with professional interest. It was an exquisite work of craftsmanship, with delicate carvings and a system of axles that revealed the skill of its creator. "Can I take a look?" he offered, holding out his hands. The boy hesitated for a moment, his fingers gripping the cart tightly before he reluctantly handed it over. "I'm Mila, the carpenter here. What about you?" "Lucas," he replied, still cautious but with a glint of curiosity in his eyes, as he watched Mila examine the toy with such care and knowledge. Donna Clara appeared at the door with a towel. "Boy, you're going to catch a cold like that. Come. Inside, let's take shelter from this rain." Her motherly voice left no room for refusal, and soon Lucas found himself inside the cozy workshop, marveling at the tools on the walls and the comforting smell of wood that permeated the room. "This cart is very special," Mila commented, already positioned at her workbench, analyzing the mechanism of the broken wheel. "It was handmade, wasn't it? An exceptional piece of work." Lucas nodded, his initial reservations beginning to melt away. "My uncle made it before he left. It's the only toy I really like." Mila noticed the shadow that passed over the boy's face at the mention of his uncle, but she kept her focus on her work. "Well, I think I can fix that. It'll need a new wheel, but I can make one that matches the others perfectly. What do you think?" Lucas's eyes lit up for the first time. "Can you really do it?" "Of course," Mila smiled, already separating the necessary tools. "Do you want to help me?" Outside, sheltered from the rain in a luxury car parked discreetly across the street, a man watched the scene through tinted windows. Gabriel Martinez, CEO of Phoenix Construction and Lucas's father, had followed the GPS signal from his son's cell phone after being informed of his sudden escape by the babysitter. His normally stern expression was softened by something he himself could not identify. Inside the workshop, Lucas was completely absorbed, watching Mila work. She explained each step of the process, showing different types of wood and tools, patiently answering the boy's increasingly frequent questions. Donna Clara had brought hot chocolate and cookies, creating such a welcoming atmosphere that neither Lucas nor Mila noticed when the rain began to ease. "See? This is how you make the perfect fit," Mila explained, demonstrating how the new wheel fitted onto the cart's axle. "Wood needs to be respected, treated with care. Each piece has its own personality." Lucas touched the newly installed wheel with reverence. "It's exactly like the others. How did you get it?" "Years of practice," Mila smiled, "and a lot of love for what I do." The sound of a discreet horn interrupted the moment. Lucas immediately recognized his father's car, and his expression changed. "I have to go," he said, quickly grabbing the cart. But before leaving, he turned to Mila. Can I come back another day?" "Of course you can," she replied, surprising herself with her own enthusiasm. "The workshop is always open to anyone who loves wood." When Lucas left, Mila watched him through the window, noticing for the first time the luxurious car that was waiting for him. There was something familiar about the male silhouette that quickly helped the boy into the vehicle, but she couldn't identify what it was. The car drove off silently, leaving Mila with a strange feeling, as if this chance encounter was the beginning of something much bigger that she couldn't yet understand. The next day, Gabriel Martinez was restless in his office on the top floor of the tallest building in the city. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of the historic center, and his eyes could not stray from the small woodworking workshop that, from this height, seemed insignificant among the modern buildings. Something about that young carpenter disturbed him, like a distant memory that stubbornly refused to reveal itself completely. "Mr. Martinez, the Phoenix project documents are ready for your signature," his secretary announced, interrupting his thoughts. On the glass and steel table, the detailed blueprints for the urban revitalization project awaited his final approval. His eyes scanned the clean lines of the ultra-modern design that promised to completely transform this area of the city. "How is Lucas?" asked Carlos Mendez, his longtime partner and friend, entering the room unceremoniously. "I heard about your little adventure yesterday." Gabriel sighed, turning in his executive chair. "Different. He's different. He's been talking all night about that woodworking shop, about how the woman fixed his car. It's been a long time since I've seen him this excited. The toy car his brother made?" Carlos arched an eyebrow. "The one he refuses to trade for any new toy?" "Exactly," Gabriel confirmed, a shadow of worry crossing his face. "Ever since he left, Lucas has shut himself down completely. No therapy, no treatment has managed to make him open up. But yesterday he talked non-stop during dinner." Carlos walked over to the window, looking out over the city. "Maybe it's just a coincidence, but that area is exactly where we plan to start demolition next month. In fact, that garage has been a problem. The owner refuses to sell even with our last offer." Gabriel felt a tightness in his chest that he couldn't explain. He remembered Lucas's expression when he talked about the Carpenter, the sparkle in her eyes that he hadn't seen for so long. "I need to get to know this woman better," he murmured, more to himself than to Carlos. Meanwhile, in the workshop, Mila was working on a special project. Her skilled hands were shaping a small block of cedar, gradually transforming it into a miniature horse. She was so focused that she didn't immediately notice Lucas standing at the door, accompanied by his nanny. "You came," she exclaimed, smiling when she saw the boy. Lucas smiled back, still shy, but visibly more at ease than the day before. "Daddy, let me come over after physical therapy," he explained, approaching the bench curiously. "What are you doing?" Mila showed the piece she was working on. "It's a gift for you, to thank you for letting me fix your cart yesterday." Lucas's eyes widened. "A wooden horse? Just like that one?" He pointed to an old photo on the wall where a beautiful rocking horse was being worked on by a gentle-looking man. "Almost," Mila smiled, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "The one in the picture was my grandfather's last project. He never got to finish it. The interlocking system was very complex, and after he passed away, well, I never could figure out exactly how he planned to make all the pieces fit together." Donna. Clara approached silently, carrying a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Your grandfather always said that each piece of wood holds a secret, and that he only reveals that secret to those who know how to listen," she commented, her eyes shining with old memories. Lucas took a cookie, but his eyes were fixed on the unfinished horse in the photo. "How does wood talk?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "Ah, my dear," Donna Clara sat down beside him. "The wood speaks through its veins, its texture. Each knot tells a story, each crack has a meaning. It is like a book that can only be read with the hands and the heart." Mila watched, moved as her grandmother shared with Lucas the same stories she herself had heard as a child. The boy absorbed every word, asking intelligent questions and demonstrating a sensitivity rare for his age. For a moment, the workshop seemed enveloped in a magical atmosphere, as if time itself had slowed down to appreciate this meeting of souls. Lucas's visits to the workshop became regular over the following weeks. The nanny, initially apprehensive, eventually gave in when she saw how the boy flourished in this environment. For the first time since he had started using a wheelchair, Lucas showed genuine interest in something, and his physical therapy sessions began to be punctuated by lively stories about his discoveries in the woodworking shop. On a particularly hot afternoon, as Mila was teaching Lucas about different types of sandpaper, a tall man in an impeccable suit stood at the door of the workshop. Gabriel Martinez watched in silence for a few moments before making his presence known. "Daddy!" Lucas exclaimed, surprised but not displeased. "Come see what Mila is teaching me." Mila stood up, feeling a strange familiarity at the sight of the man. There was something in his eyes, a shadow of recognition that she couldn't explain. "Welcome to our workshop, sir. Gabriel Martinez," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I wanted to meet in person the person who managed to awaken so much enthusiasm in my son." The last name made Mila freeze for a moment. Martinez, the same last name as the construction company that threatened her studio. Realization hit her like a bolt of lightning, but before she could fully process the information, Donna Clara emerged from the back of the workshop. Martinez. The lady stopped abruptly, her eyes fixed on the visitor. Are you Gabriel from the Youth Carpentry Project, the one that existed 10 years ago? Gabriel paled slightly, long-buried memories resurfacing. Donna Clara, I didn't recognize the place. Myla felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Now she understood why that man seemed familiar to her. Memories of her adolescence came flooding back. The social project that had changed her life, where she had discovered her calling for carpentry. The same project that had been abruptly shut down, leaving dozens of young people without direction. That is where you started, isn't it, Mila? Donna Clara continued, her voice heavy with meaning. In that project of Mr. Martinez's. Lucas looked from one adult to the other, feeling the tension growing in the air. Do you know Myla, Dad? Gabriel ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness. I coordinated a social project for training young people in carpentry a long time ago, but circumstances changed. The company needed to take a new direction. New directions? Mila finally found her voice, years of pent-up hurt emerging. The project was transforming lives. I discovered who I was thanks to it, and suddenly, without warning, it all ended because circumstances have changed. The till. Silence that followed was heavy as solid wood. Lucas, with a sensitivity beyond his years, took Mila's hand. But now you're the best carpenter in town, he said, his soft voice breaking the tension. Gabriel watched the scene with a complex expression. He saw his son, normally so reserved, demonstrating a deep connection with this young woman who, ironically, he himself had helped to form. The same young woman whose workshop his revitalization project intended to demolish. Donna Clara, always the voice of wisdom, approached with a cup of coffee. Sometimes, Mr. Martinez, life brings us back to the places where we left something unfinished. Perhaps it is no coincidence that your son found this particular workshop. Mila turned her attention back to the little horse she was carving, her hands trembling slightly. Fate seemed to have a peculiar sense of humor, intertwining their lives in this unexpected way. What neither of them knew yet was that this encounter would only be the beginning of a much greater transformation that was to come. Gabriel couldn't get the meeting in the workshop out of his mind. Sitting in his luxurious office, surrounded by financial reports and architectural plans, his mind kept returning to that space filled with sawdust and memories. Mila's hurt expression haunted him, as did the visible transformation he saw in Lucas every time his son returned from his visits to the studio. Mr. Martinez? His secretary's voice brought him back to reality. You have a meeting with the demolition crew in 5 minutes. He nodded mechanically, organizing the papers on his desk. Among them, a red folder caught his eye, the old file of the carpentry social project. He didn't know exactly why he had asked for those documents to be unearthed from the company's archives. Flipping through the yellowed pages, he found photographs of smiling teenagers, tools in hand, proud of their creations. In one of them, he recognized Myla, younger, thinner, but with the same determined look that now challenged him. In the photo, she held a small piece of woodwork, her first completed piece of the project. You won't believe what happened today, Dad. Lucas's excited voice interrupted his thoughts. The boy had just returned from another afternoon in the workshop, his clothes lightly covered in sawdust. Mila let me help with a special project. Gabriel watched his son carefully. There was a liveliness in his eyes that he hadn't seen in a long time, an energy that not even the best experts had been able to awaken. What kind of project, son? It's a rocking horse, Lucas explained, gesturing excitedly. But it's no ordinary horse. It's a project that Mila's grandfather started a long time ago. She never managed to finish it because it has a super complicated fitting system. But today, he paused dramatically, today I found some old drawings hidden in a drawer. They're the original plans, Dad. The businessman felt something stirring in his chest. He remembered his own father, a traditional carpenter who had fought until the end to keep his small workshop running. The calloused hands, the smell of varnish, the stories told between one piece and another. memories that he had buried under layers of corporate success and ambition. Donna Clara said that sometimes we need to lose something to find something greater, Lucas continued, oblivious to his father's thoughts. She tells such incredible stories, Dad. Today she told me about a centuries-old tree that— Mr. Martinez, the secretary interrupted again. The demolition crew is waiting. Gabriel looked at his son, at the red folder in his hands, at the Phoenix Project blueprints, spread out on his desk. Something was shifting inside him, like a knot in a wooden box being slowly unraveled. Cancel the meeting, he decided suddenly, and bring me all the files we have on historic properties preserved in urban revitalization projects. In the workshop, Mila was working on the carvings of the little horse she was making for Lucas when Donna Clara approached with a worried expression. Another letter from the construction company has arrived, the lady announced, holding up a letterhead envelope. And this time it's not just an offer. Mila took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, in addition to the check for an even larger amount than the previous one, there was an official notice. They had 30 days to vacate the property. The construction company had obtained authorization for demolition through a legal loophole. They can't do this, Mila murmured, but her voice betrayed the uncertainty she felt. This workshop has history, it has meaning. It's not just an old building that can be torn down. Donna Clara sat down heavily in her rocking chair, the last piece her husband had finished before he left. History and meaning don't always weigh as much as money and progress, my dear. Mila looked around at the tools she knew as extensions of her own hands, at the stains of varnish on the floor that told the story of each project undertaken there, at the photo of her grandfather that seemed to be watching her expectantly. Her eyes fell on the drawings Lucas had found earlier, meticulous blueprints of the rocking horse, with notes in the margins written in her grandfather's familiar handwriting. "I'm not giving up," she declared, her voice firm. "If Mr. Martinez wants this workshop, he's going to have to first understand what he's trying to destroy." Word of the eviction notice spread quickly through the neighborhood. Old customers, neighbors, and friends began showing up at the workshop, offering support and sharing memories of the furniture and objects Mila and her grandfather had created over the years. Each story was like an invisible thread that wove a tapestry of affection around the place. Lucas arrived earlier that afternoon, bringing with him a folder full of drawings he had made at home. "Look, Mila, I made some sketches based on your grandfather's plans. I think I understand how the horse's fitting system works." Mila took the drawings, amazed at the level of detail. The boy had not only copied the original notes, but had added his own observations with surprising insight. For someone his age, "Lucas, this is amazing," she murmured, studying the adaptations he had proposed. "You really understood the mechanism. Look, Grandma, he even marked the balance points that Grandpa always said were essential." Donna Clara approached, adjusting her glasses to examine the drawings. Her face lit up with a smile of recognition. "You know, Lucas, you remind me a lot of your father when he was young." "My father?" Lucas asked, surprised. "What do you mean?" The lady sat in her chair, her eyes lost in distant memories. "Before he became a businessman, your father had the most skilled hands I've ever seen. He frequented a carpentry shop not unlike this one. That's where he met your Uncle Fabian." Mila stopped what she was doing, her attention caught by the unexpected revelation. Lucas leaned forward in his wheelchair, eager to know more. "Fabian was an apprentice in the workshop," Donna Clara continued. "His father, Gabriel, came from a family of carpenters, but was studying architecture. Even so, he always found time to work with wood. The two became great friends, sharing dreams and projects. It was his father who inspired Fabian to become a professional carpenter." "But why didn't he ever tell me this?" Lucas asked, his voice small. "Sometimes we hold parts of ourselves so deeply that we forget where we hid them," Donna Clara replied, softly. "Your father chose a different path, but wood never forgets the hands that touched it with love." Mila processed this information in silence. She began to understand why the carpentry social project had meant so much to Gabriel, and why its sudden closure seemed to have left such a deep mark on him. The sound of footsteps at the entrance to the workshop made everyone turn around. Gabriel was standing in the doorway holding an old folder. His eyes scanned the room, stopping at the drawings spread out on the workbench. "These are blueprints for a rocking horse," he said, approaching slowly, "with a special system of fittings for weight distribution." His hands touched the paper with familiarity. "I knew this design. I saw something similar many years ago in another workshop." Lucas watched his father with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "Donna Clara was telling us about you and Uncle Fabian." Gabriel tensed for a moment, but then his shoulders relaxed. He took an old photograph from the briefcase he was carrying and handed it to his son. In it, two smiling young men posed next to an unfinished rocking horse. "Your uncle and I worked on this project together," he explained, his voice thick with restrained emotion. "It was supposed to be a gift for you, Lucas. Fabian was almost finished when he had to leave." Lucas finished softly, his fingers tracing his uncle's image in the photograph. Mila watched the scene, feeling the pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. Her grandfather's rocking horse, Lucas's drawings, Gabriel, and Fabian's story. It all seemed connected by invisible threads of fate. Carlos Mendez surveyed the city from his office, his expression hard as he studied the latest financial reports from Project Phoenix. Word that Gabriel was reconsidering demolishing the old workshop had spread quickly among investors, causing apprehension in the market. "You can't be serious, Gabriel," he said, turning to face his friend and business partner. "We're talking about millions in investment. The entire revitalization project depends on that area being completely remodeled." Gabriel was silent for a moment, his fingers drumming on the red folder of the old social project that now rarely left his desk. "What if there is a way to preserve the workshop? We could incorporate it into the project, turn it into a center for traditional crafts." "A craft center?" Carlos laughed humorlessly. "Our investors don't want folklore, Gabriel. They want results, modernity, progress. You're letting your son cloud your judgment." The mention of Lucas made Gabriel sit up straighter in his chair. "Don't you see what's happening? That workshop, it's not just an old building. It's a place of transformation. Lucas is more alive, more engaged than ever. The physical therapist said his progress in the last few weeks has been extraordinary. And for that, you're going to throw away years of work, compromise the future of the company?" Carlos moved closer to the table, his voice taking on a softer tone. "Look, I understand that you're emotionally involved, but we can't stop progress because of sentimentality." Before Gabriel could respond, his secretary rushed in. "Mr. Martinez, I think you need to see this." She turned on the television in the conference room, tuning it to a local news channel. On the screen, a news report showed the facade of Mila's workshop, surrounded by dozens of people. Neighborhood residents, longtime customers, and even some local artists had gathered in a peaceful protest against the demolition. The camera focused on Lucas, who spoke with surprising eloquence for his age. "This workshop is not just a place where furniture is made. It's where people discover who they are, where stories take shape in wood. My father always says that architecture is about creating spaces that transform lives. Well, this place transformed mine." The report continued, showing images of restored furniture, of people sharing stories about pieces that had passed through generations, all created or restored in that workshop. Mila appeared briefly, explaining how the place had become a meeting point between the city's past and present. "This is ridiculous," Carlos muttered, picking up his phone. "I'm going to call our press office. We need to get this narrative under control before—" "No," Gabriel interrupted, his eyes fixed on the image of his son. "We won't control anything." "What do you mean?" Gabriel stood up, moving closer to the window. From there he could see the small crowd gathered in front of the workshop, an island of resistance in a sea of modern buildings. "I mean, maybe we're building the wrong kind of legacy." In the workshop, Mila worked frantically on the rocking horse, her hands moving with precision as people came and went, offering support and sharing memories. Donna Clara served coffee to the visitors, turning the protest into a kind of celebration of the place's history. "Look at this," said an elderly gentleman, patting an antique dresser. "This is where your grandfather restored this piece over 40 years ago. It belonged to my grandmother, and now it will be passed down to my granddaughter." Mila smiled, but her eyes were moist. Each story she heard was like a new weight on her shoulders, a responsibility that went far beyond simply keeping a business running. It was about preserving a way of seeing and experiencing the world that seemed increasingly rare. Lucas, after giving his interview, went back into the workshop, his eyes shining with excitement. "Did you see, Mila? They're supporting us, and look what I brought." He took out of his backpack some more drawings of the rocking horse, with new details and adaptations. "I think I figured out how we can make the fit work perfectly." The protest outside the workshop had turned into a sort of impromptu festival of memories and crafts. People brought their old pieces to display, shared stories of furniture that had been passed down through generations, and some even offered to teach traditional carpentry techniques to the curious children who had gathered. Mila watched with a mixture of emotion and concern. The support from the community was heartwarming, but the deadline for the notification was still ticking. As she worked on the rocking horse, following Lucas's meticulous instructions, her mind raced for a solution. "You know what's amazing?" Lucas said, adjusting his wheelchair to get a better view of Mila's work. "Every person who comes in here has a different story to tell, but they all connect in some way." Donna Clara, who was organizing an improvised afternoon coffee for the visitors, smiled when she heard the boy's comment. "That's how life works, my dear. We are all like different pieces of wood that, when well fitted together, form something bigger and more beautiful." The sound of firm footsteps at the entrance made everyone turn. Gabriel Martinez stood in the doorway, his impeccable suit contrasting with the rustic surroundings of the workshop. His normally impassive face showed signs of a bad night's sleep and difficult decisions. "Dad!" Lucas exclaimed, surprised but happy to see him. "Come see how the horse is coming along." His eyes lit up with pride. "Mila is following exactly the system we discovered in her grandfather's drawings, and it's working perfectly." Gabriel approached, slowly, his eyes taking in every detail of the work in progress. His hands almost involuntarily touched the polished wood, and for a moment everyone could see in him the young carpenter he once was. "The fit," he murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. "It's the same system Fabian was developing." His fingers traced the joints with professional expertise. He always said that the strength of a piece lies not in the nails or screws, but in the way the parts naturally fit together. Mila watched the scene intently, realizing for the first time the true extent of the connection between their stories. "Is that why you created the Carpentry Social Project? Because of your brother?" Gabriel closed his eyes for a moment, as if organizing long-held thoughts. Fabian always believed that carpentry could change lives. He said that working with wood teaches more than technique. It teaches patience, respect, the importance of recognizing beauty in imperfections. "Like this knot here," Lucas pointed to a natural mark in the horse's wood. "Mila taught me that we don't need to hide the knots, because they are part of the tree's history." "Exactly," Gabriel smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "Your uncle would have loved to see you figure that out, Lucas." A meaningful silence filled the workshop. Outside, the voices of the gathered community created an atmosphere of hope and resilience. Inside, something equally powerful was taking shape. Not just a rocking horse, but the reconnection of stories that seemed lost. "Mr. Martinez," Mila began, her voice firm but gentle. "This place is not just a workshop. It is a meeting place between past and future, between technique and heart. Every piece that leaves here carries a bit of that history." Gabriel nodded slowly, his gaze roaming the space. The ancient tools hung neatly, the stains of varnish on the floor that told stories of past projects, the portrait of Mila's grandfather, who seemed to watch everything with silent approval. The next morning, the boardroom at Phoenix Construction was buzzing with tension. Carlos had called an extraordinary meeting with the main shareholders, and the numbers projected on the screen did not lie. The delay in the Phoenix project schedule was beginning to significantly impact the value of the company's shares. "Gentlemen," Carlos began, his voice urgent, "we are facing a delicate situation. The local media has turned that rundown workshop into a kind of symbol of cultural resistance. Social media is full of emotional stories about the place, and this is affecting our image. Gabriel stood silently watching the reactions of those present. His phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. "Dad, you have to see what we discovered in the workshop today." Enclosed was a photo of the nearly finished rocking horse, its graceful forms emerging from the wood like a living work of art. "Our proposal," Carlos continued, "is to significantly increase the supply for the property. Everyone has their price and—" "It's not a question of price," Gabriel finally said, standing up. He walked over to the panoramic window from where he could see the small studio, now surrounded by banners and posters of support. "Gentlemen, I would like to ask for a few minutes of your attention to present an alternative." With a command, he changed the projection. On the screen, a new architectural project appeared, a modern reinterpretation of the historic block that preserved not only the workshop, but organically integrated it into the development of the area. "Imagine a center of craftsmanship and innovation," he began, his eyes shining with a long-forgotten passion. "A space where traditional woodworking techniques meet contemporary design, where young apprentices work side by side with master craftsmen, creating unique pieces that combine history and modernity." The shareholders shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, but Gabriel continued, "We already have a waiting list of customers interested in high-quality, handcrafted furniture. The market for unique pieces is growing, and our research shows that consumers are increasingly valuing products with history and meaning." "That's crazy," Carlos interrupted. "You want to turn a billion-dollar real estate project into a craft school." "I want to turn it into something that has real meaning," Gabriel replied, his voice firm. "Something we can be proud to pass on to future generations." Meanwhile, in the workshop, Mila and Lucas were working on the final details of the rocking horse. The boy had discovered, hidden in an old trunk, a diary belonging to Mila's grandfather, with detailed notes on finishing techniques. "Look at this," he exclaimed, holding up a yellowed page. "Your grandfather explains exactly how to age wood. It's the same one my Uncle Fabian used." Mila took the journal with reverent care, her eyes roaming over the handwritten words. "It's amazing how everything connects," she murmured. "As if your uncle and my grandfather were saving these techniques so that one day we could discover them together." Donna Clara, who was watching everything from her chair, smiled wisely. "There are no coincidences, my dears. There are meetings that were destined to happen." The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of more visitors. It was a group of architecture students, cameras in hand, fascinated by the history of the place. Among them, a young reporter was preparing a special report on historical sites and their importance to the city's identity. "It's incredible how this place has stood the test of time," the reporter commented as she filmed Mila working. "In a world where everything is disposable, you keep alive a tradition that—" She was interrupted by the sound of a sudden break in the street. Gabriel jumped out of his car, still wearing his meeting suit, but with a different expression on his face, a mix of urgency and determination. "Mila," he called, crossing the workshop with quick steps. "I need to show you something. Something that could change everything." Gabriel spread the architectural plans on the workbench, taking care not to get sawdust on the paper. Mila, Lucas, and Donna Clara approached, curious, while other visitors to the workshop formed a circle around them. "It's a new project," he explained, his finger tracing the lines of the drawing. "A way to integrate the workshop into the development of the area, preserving its essence and expanding its purpose." Mila studied the drawings with professional attention. The modern lines intertwined harmoniously with the original structure of the workshop, creating a space that seemed to breathe history and innovation at the same time. "Here," Gabriel pointed to a specific area of the project, "we would have an exhibition space for crafts. Over there, a workshop area where master craftsmen could teach their techniques. And this part," he smiled at Lucas, "would be a studio adapted for inclusive woodworking classes." "What do you mean, Dad?" Lucas asked, his eyes shining with curiosity. "Adjustable workbenches, adapted tools, space designed to accommodate people with different needs," Gabriel explained. "Because what I learned from you, son, is that the art of carpentry should have no barriers. Donna Clara took out her glasses to examine the drawings better. "This reminds me a lot of the ideas your brother Fabian had," she commented softly. "He always talked about creating a space where carpentry could be accessible to everyone." Gabriel's face softened at the memory. Fabian understood that working with wood isn't just about creating objects, it's about transforming lives. "That's what I tried to do with the social project years ago," he turned to Mila, "and that's what you've continued to do here, even after the project ended." Mila felt her throat tighten with emotion. "But what about the investors? The company's board?" "Some people weren't happy," Gabriel admitted. "Carlos especially thinks it's crazy, but I already have enough support to move forward. In fact," he hesitated for a moment, "I'd like to propose a partnership." A murmur of surprise ran through the group of observers. Mila frowned in confusion. "Partnership?" "You would continue to be the lead craftswoman with full creative autonomy," Gabriel explained. "The company would provide the structure and resources to expand the work you already do. We could resume the social project, create training programs, and turn it all into a corporate business?" Mila interrupted, apprehensive. "No," Gabriel smiled, understanding her fear. "To transform it into something bigger, but still retain the soul of the place, like this rocking horse you're building, using traditional techniques to create something new, but preserving the essence of what makes it special." Lucas, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly moved in his wheelchair, approaching the workbench. "Mila, look!" He pointed to a detail in the design that the adults had not noticed. "The shape of the new building is like the growth rings of a tree." In fact, seen from above, the project formed concentric circles that expanded from the original workshop, like the rings that mark the age and history of a century-old tree. "Your father is smarter than he looks," Donna Clara commented with a mischievous smile, making everyone laugh. Mila ran her hand over the drawings, feeling beneath her calloused fingers the potential for something truly transformative. The half-finished rocking horse seemed to watch them from the corner of the workshop, like a silent witness to that moment of change. The next day, the workshop was different. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the familiar aroma of sawdust as an unusual group gathered around the large work table. Mila, still hesitant about Gabriel's proposal, had invited some of her old colleagues from the carpentry social project for an important conversation. "So it's true?" asked João, one of the former students who now had his own carpentry shop in the suburbs. "Is the project going to come back? But this time for real?" Gabriel, who had changed from his suit to a simple shirt, nodded. "The idea is to create something permanent, not just a social project, but a training and professional development center. And how can we trust that it won't end up like last time?" The question came from Anna, a craftswoman Mila had personally trained after the original project ended. Her tone was not one of accusation, but of genuine concern. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of Lucas's wheelchair, which entered the workshop carrying something in his lap. Mila's grandfather's diary that they had found days before. "Look at this," he said, opening the notebook to a specific page. "Mila's grandfather wrote something here that I think everyone needs to hear." Mila picked up the journal, recognizing her grandfather's handwriting. "The true strength of a piece of wood lies not only in its structure, but in the stories it carries and the lives it touches. A well-made piece of furniture spans generations, as does the knowledge that created it." "Your grandfather was a wise man," Gabriel said, his voice soft, "and he was right. What I'm proposing isn't just a business, it's a way to ensure that this knowledge, these stories, live on and multiply." Donna Clara, who had been watching everything from her usual chair, stood up with surprising energy. "Come with me, all of you. I want to show you something." She led them to a small storage room at the back of the workshop, a space that was rarely opened. Using an old key, she unlocked the door, revealing dust-covered shelves where dozens of unfinished projects rested. "Every piece here," she explained, running her hand over a partially carved cradle, "has a story. Some were started by my husband, others by apprentices who passed through here. Some have been waiting years to be finished, not because they lacked skill, but because they needed the right moment, the right hands." Mila had never paid much attention to that warehouse. It was a place her grandfather had kept locked away, and after his departure, she had respected its mystery. Now she saw each unfinished piece with new eyes. "Look, Dad," Lucas exclaimed, pointing to a corner. "There's another rocking horse here, and the system of attachments. It's just like the one we're making." Gabriel stepped closer, his expression changing as he recognized the work. This is impossible," he murmured, touching the aged wood. "This is Fabian's original design, but how—" "Your brother and my husband were friends," Donna Clara revealed with a gentle smile. "They shared ideas, techniques. When Fabian began developing the special fitting system for the rocking horse, this is where he did the first tests. The revelation hit everyone like a wave. The connections, which already seemed extraordinary, went even deeper than they had imagined. The rocking horse that Mila and Lucas were building was not just a recreation. It was the continuation of a work that had united generations without their knowing it. "Now do you understand why this place is so special?" Donna Clara asked, looking directly at Gabriel. "Here's not just the walls or the tools. It's the stories that intertwine, the dreams that connect through time." Mila felt tears well up in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what lay before her. This wasn't just about saving a workshop. It was about preserving a living legacy, a web of connections that went far beyond the woodworking shop. The discovery in the warehouse changed everything. In the days that followed, the workshop became a true center for reunions and reconnections. Former students of the social project began to show up spontaneously, bringing their own stories and experiences. Each of them had something to share, a technique learned, a path taken. "It's amazing how everything fits together," Lucas commented as he watched Mila and Joan restore Fabian's original rocking horse. "Like pieces of a puzzle that were waiting to be found." Gabriel spent more and more time in the workshop, his business suit gradually replaced by more casual clothes, his hands becoming familiar with the feel of wood again. On one particularly meaningful afternoon, he sat down with Mila to discuss the details of the new project. "I want you to understand something," he said, spreading the updated drawings across the counter. "I'm not proposing this just as a businessman. I'm proposing this as someone who finally understands the true value of what we have here." Mila studied the new plans carefully. The design had evolved, incorporating suggestions from her and the other artisans. The training space had been expanded, including specific areas for different techniques and an amphitheater for lectures and demonstrations. "And this area here?" she asked, pointing to a space marked simply Memorial. Gabriel smiled, a special glint in his eyes. "It's a surprise, something Lucas helped me plan." As if summoned by the mention of his name, Lucas appeared, pushing his chair with renewed energy. "Mila, you have to see this. Anna has discovered an incredible technique for finishing the horse." The boy's transformation was remarkable. His physical therapy sessions had progressed significantly, driven by his desire to become more independent in the workshop. The wheelchair, which had once felt like a prison, was now just a detail in his growing confidence. "Did you know," Anna commented to Mila as she demonstrated the finishing technique, "that it was because of your example that I decided to pursue carpentry? After the project was over, seeing you keep this place alive, persisting even when everything seemed impossible, that gave me the strength to continue too." Mila felt the weight of those words. She looked around the workshop, now full of life and purpose. The unfinished projects in the warehouse had been carefully catalogued, and some were already being taken up by different artisans. It was as if each piece was finding its destiny. Donna Clara observed everything with a serene smile, weaving old stories with the new ones that were forming. "Do you know what your grandfather always said?" she commented to Mila. "That a carpentry workshop is like a tree. Its roots go deep into the earth, supporting everything that grows above. And even when it seems like it has stopped growing, inside the sap continues to flow, preparing the next flowering." The metaphor could not have been more apt. What was happening here was exactly that. A new flowering, nourished by deep roots of history and tradition. The workshop was not just being saved, it was being transformed into something even more significant than it had ever been. The old workshop was bustling with activity on this special morning. A month had passed since the discovery in the warehouse and the renovation project was well underway. What was most surprising, however, was how the change had been carried out in a way that respected the essence of the place. Each new addition seemed to have always belonged there. "It's time to show the surprise," Gabriel announced, guiding Mila, Lucas, and Donna Clara to the area that was marked simply as Memorial on the plans. The newly installed solid wood door had been carved with an intricate pattern that resembled the growth rings of a tree. When they opened the door, everyone was speechless. The space, once a simple storage room, had been transformed into a welcoming gallery. The walls were displayed with old and new photographs telling the story of carpentry in the city. In a prominent place, a large photo showed Mila's grandfather and Gabriel's brother Fabian working together on the first rocking horse. "But how did you get these photos?" Mila asked, excited. "Some were in the company's archives, from the time of the social project," Gabriel explained. "Others Donna Clara helped me find, but the most important ones are there." He pointed to a central area of the room where a fine wood pedestal supported two rocking horses side by side, the original, started by Fabian and found in storage, and the new one, which Mila and Lucas had just completed together. "The horse is not just a toy," Lucas explained, surprising everyone with his mature understanding. "It is a symbol of how stories continue, of how knowledge passes from one person to another." Donna Clara approached the horses, her fingers gently stroking the wood. "Look here," she pointed to a particular mark on the original horse. "This signature, that was how your brother marked his special pieces, wasn't it, Gabriel?" Gabriel nodded, his voice choked with emotion. Fabian believed that each piece should bear the mark of its maker, not out of vanity, but as a reminder that behind every object there is a human being, a story. Mila examined the new horse, noticing for the first time small details she had unconsciously incorporated into the design, elements that echoed both her grandfather's and Fabian's work. "It's like they've been guiding us this whole time," she murmured. "And they were," Donna Clara smiled. "Through the techniques they taught, the stories they left, the lives they touched." The memorial space continued to reveal surprises. An entire wall had been dedicated to the students of the social project. Photos, testimonials, and examples of their work told stories of transformation and overcoming. In a special corner, an interactive digital screen allowed visitors to share their own memories and connections with the carpentry shop. "But the best part," Lucas said, maneuvering his chair into a designated space, "is this one." It was a converted workspace with benches at different heights and specially modified tools. A banner above it announced, "Fabian Martinez Inclusive Workshop, because woodworking is for everyone." Gabriel placed his hand on his son's shoulder, visibly moved. It was Lucas's idea. He said that if carpentry changed his life, other children should have that opportunity too. Mila watched the scene unfold with a deep sense of gratitude. The memorial was not just a place of remembrance, it was a living place, connecting past and present, honoring roots while paving the way for the future. "There's one more thing," Gabriel said, heading toward a small side door. "Something we found in Fabian's things that I think is in its rightful place now." Opening the door revealed a small library. Handcrafted wooden shelves held books, notebooks, and journals, a treasure trove of knowledge accumulated by generations of woodworkers. Among them was Fabian's notebook, containing all his unfinished projects and dreams yet to be realized. News of the transformation of the old workshop spread quickly throughout the city. What had once been seen as an obstacle to progress had become a model of how tradition and innovation could go hand in hand. Journalists began to show up, eager to tell the story of a place that had defied the relentless logic of urban development. "It's amazing to see how everything has changed," said Anna, who is now in charge of the new artisan training program, "and at the same time, how the essence remains the same." The workshop was busier than ever. In addition to traditional carpentry work, the space now hosted classes, workshops, and gatherings that brought together people of all ages and backgrounds. The smell of fresh wood, mixed with the lively buzz of voices, creating a unique atmosphere of creation and learning. Lucas, in particular, had blossomed in extraordinary ways. His passion for woodworking led him to develop creative adaptations of traditional tools, making them accessible to people with different needs. His innovations began to attract the attention of experts in assistive technology. "You know what's so cool?" he told Mila as they worked on a new project. "Everyone who comes here ends up finding their own way to connect with the wood. It's like the place knows exactly what each person needs." Mila smiled, watching the boy who had become not just her apprentice, but a true creative partner. "Your Uncle Fabian used to say something similar," she replied. "That wood has the power to bring out the best in everyone." Gabriel, who had found a new balance between his roles as a businessman and a craftsman, began spending some of his time teaching basic woodworking skills to stressed-out executives. "It's a form of therapy," he explained. "Working with your hands, creating something tangible, it reconnects you with a part of yourself that you often forget." The urban revitalization project continued, but in a different form than originally planned. The workshop became the heart of a new creative district, where small studios and art spaces began to flourish. The place that was supposed to be demolished ended up inspiring a much deeper and more meaningful transformation. Donna Clara, in her quiet wisdom, observed everything with satisfaction. "Do you know," she commented one afternoon as a group of children were learning the first steps of carpentry, "that the oldest trees in the forest do not grow alone? Their roots connect with those of the younger trees, sharing nutrients and experience. That is how a forest stays strong." Mila understood the metaphor. The workshop had become exactly that, a connection point between generations, between the old and the new, between different ways of seeing and experiencing the world. Each person who passed through there left a little of themselves and took something precious with them. One day, while organizing some tools, Mila found a small piece of wood carved by Lucas. On it, the boy had engraved a simple but profound phrase, "Here stories never end, they just gain new chapters." It was true. What had begun as a struggle to preserve a physical space had transformed into something much larger, a living movement of preservation and renewal, where every piece created, every technique taught, every story shared, was a new link in a chain that stretched both into the past and into the future. 6 months had passed since the memorial's inauguration, and the transformation was not limited to the physical space. On a quiet afternoon, Mila watched through the workshop window as Gabriel taught Lucas some of the finer secrets of wood carving. The sight made her smile. Father and son had developed a special bond through carpentry. "You need to feel the grain of the wood," Gabriel explained, guiding his son's hands. "It's as if it's telling you a secret, showing you the path the tool should follow." Lucas, who was now able to move around more independently, thanks to exercises specially designed for his work in the workshop, absorbed every word with rapt attention. His wheelchair had been modified with a special system that he had helped design, allowing him to reach different working heights with ease. "How did Uncle Fabian do it?" asked the boy, always eager for stories about the uncle he had never met, but whose presence seemed to permeate every corner of that place. Gabriel paused for a moment, a soft smile appearing on his face. "Your uncle, he had a unique way about him. He said that every piece of wood held a story waiting to be told, and that our job was simply to help that story come to light." Mila approached, carrying a project she had been working on, a music box with delicate carvings that combined traditional elements with contemporary design. "I think I finally understand what he meant," she said, showing off the details of her work. The sound of laughter caught the trio's attention. In the area dedicated to inclusive classes, a group of children were taking part in a special workshop. Some of them were in wheelchairs, others with different needs, all completely absorbed in the joy of creating something with their own hands. "You were the one who came up with this idea," Gabriel said to Lucas, his tone thick with pride, "to turn your experiences into opportunities for other children." "Actually," Lucas replied, his hands still working the wood, "it was Mila who taught me that limitations are just invitations to find new paths." Donna Clara, who was knitting in her usual corner while supervising everything with her watchful eyes, smiled at the comment. "You know, Lucas, Your arrival here was like that rain that falls after a long drought. It brought new life to a soil that was waiting to bloom. The analogy was perfect. The workshop, which had once been at risk of becoming just another building demolished in the name of progress, had been transformed into a true urban oasis. The old walls now housed not only traditional woodworking, but also dreams, possibilities, and transformations. Gabriel's skeptical former business partner, Carlos, had made a surprise visit the week before. Mila found him standing in front of the memorial, looking intently at the photographs and stories on display. "I was wrong," he admitted when he noticed her presence. "This is much bigger than just a business. It's a living legacy." Mila thought about this as she watched Gabriel and Lucas work together. The relationship between father and son had blossomed in a way no one could have predicted. Woodworking had become a language through which they could express all the love and understanding that had previously seemed trapped somewhere between grief and unspoken expectations. "Mila," Lucas's voice brought her back to the present. "Come see what I've discovered." He pointed excitedly to a pattern he had just carved, a sequence of curves that intertwined harmoniously. "It's impressive." She moved closer to examine it better. "It looks—" "The infinity symbol," Gabriel added, recognizing the pattern. "It was Fabian's trademark in his most special works." "Not only that," Lucas smiled proudly. "If you look closely, you can see that they are two infinities intertwined, like the stories that meet here in the workshop." The success of the converted workshop began to attract national attention. Architecture and design magazines began to highlight how the project had successfully integrated historic preservation with social innovation. But what really made the place special were the little stories that unfolded every day. One morning, Mila found a small, carefully wrapped object on her workbench. It was a gift from Lucas, a miniature rocking horse perfectly crafted, with all the intricate fittings they had learned together. "It's so you never forget where it all began," the boy explained, his voice brimming with affection. "And to remember that sometimes the most unexpected encounters are the ones that change our lives." Gabriel, who was watching the scene, felt his heart race. In recent months, his admiration for Mila had grown along with the transformation of the workshop. He saw in her not only a skilled craftswoman, but a woman of extraordinary strength, capable of seeing possibilities where others saw only obstacles. "Mila," he called, gathering his courage, "can I talk to you for a moment?" They walked to the memorial, the Eindai space that had become such a powerful symbol of their intertwined histories. Standing before the two rocking horses, the old one and the new one, Gabriel took Mila's hands in his. "You know, I spent years building buildings, believing that success was measured in floors and square feet," he began, his voice soft. "But it was here in this place that I nearly destroyed that I found the most important foundation of my life." Mila looked at him intensely, feeling that something important was about to happen. Their hands, calloused from working with wood, met naturally. "What I mean is," Gabriel continued, his words coming from the heart, "that just like these pieces of wood we work with, some stories need the right time to reveal their true purpose. And mine only started to make sense when you and this workshop entered it." Donna Clara, who coincidentally was passing through the hallway at that moment, smiled when she saw the scene. Lucas, following her in his wheelchair, also stopped to watch. "Dad," he called softly, "I think you should show her." Gabriel nodded, pulling a small wooden box from his pocket, a work he had made himself, his hands recalling old skills. Inside it was a delicate ring, with carvings that resembled the grain of a fine wood. "Mila," he said, kneeling on the ancient wooden floor, "will you help me build not just a renovated workshop, but a family? With imperfect joints, perhaps, but strong as the heart of this wood that brought us together." The silence that followed was filled with the soft creaking of the floorboards, as if the workshop itself was breathing in anticipation. Mila looked at Lucas, who was radiating happiness, at Donna Clara, who was discreetly wiping away a tear, and finally at Gabriel. "You've really learned how to sand properly," she replied with a mischievous smile, tears of joy in her eyes. I think now we can really start putting together something special. Mila and Gabriel's wedding was celebrated in the workshop itself, transformed for the occasion into a magical space where the aroma of wood mixed with the scent of flowers. The guests sat on handmade benches, created especially for the event, by the students of the social project, each piece telling its own story. Lucas, impeccably dressed in his suit, led the ceremony in a special way. He had created an emotional presentation about how this space had brought together not just two people, but an entire community. His wheelchair, now decorated with delicate carvings that he had made himself, moved gracefully among the guests. "You know what's amazing?" he said during his speech. "It all started with a broken wheel on a wooden cart. Sometimes it's the things that seem broken that take us to the most extraordinary places." Donna Clara, radiant in her blue dress, watched everything with teary eyes. Beside her, an empty chair had been decorated with a portrait of Mila's grandfather and another of Fabian, as if the two great master craftsmen were present to witness that moment. "They're here," she whispered to Mila before the ceremony. "In every piece of wood, in every tool, in every story this place holds." News of the wedding attracted unexpected attention. A major architecture magazine had sent a reporter to cover the event, interested in how the love story between a traditional craftswoman and a visionary entrepreneur had resulted in the preservation and reinvention of a historic space. "It's more than a love story between two people," Mila explained to the reporter. "It's about love for the craft, for tradition, for the possibility of transformation. Every person who walks through that door becomes part of that story." The SEW workshop project had become a successful model, inspiring similar initiatives in other cities. The concept of inclusive workspaces, which Mila and Lucas had developed together, was being studied and replicated in different contexts. "Look at that," said Carlos, who surprised everyone not only by attending the wedding, but by bringing special news. The Phoenix Project was selected as an example of innovation in historic preservation. And it's not because of the modern architecture we initially planned, but because it found a way to make the old and the new coexist and strengthen each other. During the party, as guests danced and shared stories, Gabriel found a moment to take Mila to the memorial. There, in front of the two rocking horses that had symbolized so much in their lives, he gave her a special gift. "I found this among Fabian's things," she said, revealing an old notebook. "These are projects he never got to carry out, dreams he kept hidden. I thought maybe we could bring them to life in our own way." Mila leafed through the notebook with reverent care, recognizing in the marginal notes the same love of wood that she had learned from her grandfather. "These aren't just blueprints," she said, her voice moving. "They're seeds he planted for the future." The party continued into the night, with music, laughter, and many stories shared. In one particularly touching moment, Lucas surprised everyone by showing a video he had secretly prepared, a montage of images that showed the transformation of the workshop and the people who were part of it. "Family is not just the one we are born into," he narrated in the video. "It is also the one we build, piece by piece, with care, love, and sometimes a little sawdust in the process." A year after their wedding, the workshop continued to amaze everyone with its capacity for renewal. On a special morning, Mila and Gabriel inaugurated the newest addition to the space, an area dedicated to training young carpenters, specially adapted to accommodate people with different needs. Lucas, now 12, had become something of an ambassador for the project. His innovations in adaptive tools and inclusive techniques had caught the attention of special education experts across the country. But what made him most proud was seeing other children discover, like him, the transformative power of working with wood. "Every person who comes in here has a different story," he explained to a group of visitors, "and every piece we create tells a little bit of that story." Donna Clara, who remained the welcoming heart of the place, had organized a special space in the memorial library, a section dedicated to the diaries and notes of the different carpenters who had passed through the workshop over the years. "It is our garden of memories," she said, "where the roots of the past nourish the dreams of the future." Mila and Gabriel had found a unique balance between tradition and innovation. While she kept the ancient techniques of carpentry alive, he used his business experience to ensure that the project remained sustainable and constantly evolving. "You know what's amazing?" Mila said one afternoon as they worked on a new piece together. "How everything connects. Lucas's broken stroller, the social project you created years ago, Fabian's rocking horse, my grandfather's stories. It was like each moment was preparing us for something bigger." Gabriel smiled, understanding perfectly what she meant. "Like the rings of a tree," he replied. "Each circle tells a story, but together they form something much more meaningful." The workshop had become a meeting point for different worlds. Stressed executives participated in carpentry workshops alongside young apprentices from the social project. Contemporary artists collaborated with traditional master craftsmen, creating pieces that blurred the boundaries between art and craft. In a special corner of the workshop, the original rocking horse, now completely restored, occupied a place of honor. Beside it, a plaque told its story, not just as a piece of woodwork, but as a symbol of how unfinished dreams can be given new life through hands and hearts willing to continue them. "Mila," Lucas called excitedly, entering the workshop after his physical therapy session. "Look who came to visit us." It was a group of children from a special school, some in wheelchairs, others with different needs. Their eyes shone with curiosity as they explored the space, touching the different textures of the wood, discovering the possibilities that opened up there. Mila and Gabriel exchanged a knowing look. There was the true meaning of everything they had built, not just a successful business or a preserved space, but a place where stories continued to be born, where lives continued to be transformed. "You were right," Gabriel whispered to Mila, watching Lucas patiently teach a girl how to use an adapted tool. "We don't sell wood here, we transform stories." And so, between sawdust and dreams, between ancient techniques and modern innovations, between children's laughter and the wisdom of master craftsmen, the workshop continued its eternal beginning. Each day brought a new story to be told, a new challenge to be overcome, a new dream to be carved in the wood of life. As Lucas himself had said,